where we showcase amazing Australian women speakers. So you get to see the huge amount of talent available. And so we can shift the stats from 30% women speakers at events to 50%. I'm Rachel Pietsch, and joining me today is the lovely Christine Williams. How are you today, Christine?
I'm very well on this sunny autumn day. Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. It's a beautiful day here in Melbourne, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Now, I was
Best,
going to tell you, oh, sorry, Christine, what were
no,
you?
autumn, best time of the year.
Oh, it is. It's lovely. It's lovely. And it's still nice, like warm during the day.
Yes.
So, about Christine, for over 10 years, Christine has been helping everyday Australians achieve their financial goals and secure their retirement through property investment. As a property portfolio strategist and principal of Smarter Property Investing, she offers a full range of property investment services, from sourcing high yield properties to educating and informing clients about the market trends and opportunities. With qualifications and experience as a mortgage broker, real estate agent, and PIAA accredited property specialist, Christine is able to provide tailored and holistic solutions for her clients. She also runs educational investment seminars and speaks at various networking events to share her insights and strategies with a wider audience, with a mission to empower Australians to build a safe, sound, and secure property portfolio that will provide a comfortable retirement without impacting their lives now. That's quite impressive, Christine. Have I got everything correct there?
Yes, you have. The Smarter Property Investing is actually 14 years old in August this year. And from an industry perspective, I've actually been in the industry now just on 20 years. The speaking, of course, did start just over 10 years ago. So the speaking has really come into play to deliver education. And so it's delivering education that I feel that's what my key to what I speak about really is.
Yes. Well, that was basically my first. You've already, preempted my first question. What is it that you speak about, and why? And just reading about you in that blurb, it's clear that you're passionate about helping everyday, ordinary Australians get ahead and be ready for the retirement years of our lives. So, tell me more.
So we all have access to either superannuation or savings or the share market. But I have found that in my case, as much as I have a diversified portfolio, property is something that I just understand. Not because I came out of a family of history with property, because gosh, my childhood was living in rentals or living in caravans. And even after I married, my parents still didn't have a house. So it wasn't that I came from that from an educational perspective or a family heritage perspective. It was something that I had to learn after I became an adult and a mother, and eventually divorcing and going out on my own and restarting again. And property just became the vehicle that I become aware of and attached to. It seemed, people talk about bricks and mortar, they want hands-on. Look, it was a little bit of that, but really, in actual fact, it's because I understand numbers, and the numbers just computed with me. I did like the touchy-feely. Shares are numbers as well, but you really can't touch or feel them. You're just talking to this computer screen, or you have this certificate in the mail. Didn't really mean much to me. So I do like property, and it really is understanding what can go wrong. And I suppose that's how my educational presentation started. What could go wrong? Because if anything went wrong, it went wrong with me, and I had to get through that. And so I learned so much along my own personal journey of what not to do, that family and friends would ask me, and I'd start, well, don't do this, do that. And, more and more and more, my husband, I remarried, he said, this is a business, Christine. You should start educating and teaching people. And really, that's how it happened. It came from a gamut of mistakes to a gamut of successes. And with the successes came from making those mistakes and not making those mistakes again. So really, that's how I empower people to take the fear out of investing in property and letting them know that I made mistakes along the way. I'm just going to teach you not how to make those mistakes.
Yes. And that is incredibly important information, because there are lots of mistakes to be made, and I think it makes us a better teacher when we've had to really figure it out. And it sounds like you've well and truly gone through that process. But how nice is it to get to the other side and say, "I've actually figured this out"?
Yeah, and it's and you know something, you don't actually know that you have until you have. It's a journey. It's been a journey. I'm in my 60s, and it's a journey, and it's understanding. We don't know what we don't know until we find out about it.
Yeah,
And really that's where it's come from.
yeah,
Just learning not to do the same thing. And I I'm adamant that we have our mainstream media. It is so negative out there,
yeah,
and we can turn this really into something positive. We really just have to go back to basics, understand about delayed gratification,
yeah.
and making a decision about how we're going to spend our money and where we're going to spend our money.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because we've got a whole life to live, a
Yes,
whole
yes,
life to live, and
yes.
we're not going to work for all of those years. So, what are we going to do with the rest of it? How are we going to survive?
And if we go back to perhaps our grandparents or our great grandparents,
Mm,
the survival rate there was, they'd work until they were 60, 65, and unfortunately they'd be meeting St. Peter by the time they were 70 or 75,
yeah,
which was a short span of retirement, but it was a
mhm,
short span of having to fund that retirement. And
yeah,
of course, now with our medical, advance in medical and health and fitness and wellness,
mm,
we are living longer. So we still may choose that retirement age to be at 60, 65, or 67, but
mm,
we're living till 85, 87, 90, 95. And, we now need to fund not 5, 10 years, we're funding 20, 30, and in some cases 40 years when people decide they want to retire at 50. So to
mm,
fund 40 years worth of lifestyle, we're starting to talk big money here.
yeah,
Yeah. So to me, it's a property that'll help do that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because it gains in value, not like a car, where as soon as you drive it out of the shop, it's downhill from
Yeah.
there. Exactly. You
Yeah.
must have made so much difference to different families. Do you have memorable experiences where you have been able to change people's lives?
I I can't tell you how humbling it is when you either have a divorced male or female
Yep.
and you have to get them back on track.
Yeah.
And 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, the thank yous I get and the incredible appreciation of how I've changed their life's trajectory
Yep.
from being such a low point. So,
Mm.
they're my divorce clients. But
Yep.
then I get, mum and dads whereby they've got their home, they've got children are getting through or coming out of secondary school, and they start thinking, gosh, I've only got, 10, 15, 20 years before I'm retiring.
Yeah.
And they come into my world, and again, 2, 3, 5 years down the track,
Mm.
the amount of gratitude I am sent
Yeah.
for changing their life's trajectory by putting in place a strategy, and we were using property as that vehicle,
Yeah.
together with the education and together with the what ifs and together with making sure that we can mitigate as much risk and as fear as we possibly can based on their own current lifestyle and what they want to achieve. So
Yeah.
it it is so humbling when the light bulb goes on, and it is so humbling to hear their stories and when they come back and speak to me. And I suppose I'm very grateful to know that, I've got clients that have been in my world, that have been in the industry, like for around
Mm.
20 years, but I've got clients that have been in my world and they just keep coming back, and,
Yeah.
and then they get their adult children to come back.
Yeah.
And I suppose a couple of the amazing instances for me was when I had mum and dad, I've got their adult children, but then they introduced me to their parents, and their
Mm.
parents have never had a property. Now that's exactly where I come from.
Yeah.
And it is just amazing to think that I have created this generational business by using property as a vehicle for families. So yeah, it is incredible. And I've had a business coach that really had to get my head around the value of what I was giving and how I was changing lives.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that way. I just thought of it from, I'm educating you so you don't make mistakes. I'm educating you so this is going to be successful.
Yeah.
But I never really took a step back to really visualize
Mm.
and see the financial impact I did make. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very humbling.
Wow. And to just know that what you're doing is working. I mean, there's the intention to help people, but the actual figures or the numbers, as you say, they speak for themselves, don't they?
They do, and it is incredible. And I suppose that's a difference between, I never really went out to sell. I went out to educate,
Yeah.
and that can be the difference with the outcome. Yes.
Yes. Yes. So when you go to speak, you're talking about pretty much most of the time, or all of the time, about how not to make the mistakes that you made.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Go ahead.
I suppose the format of the hour is
Yeah.
around the natural how, what, when, and where. People come with the expectation of learning how, what, when, and where.
Yeah.
But I've broken it down to people to understand what is their end goal, because we've got to start with the end goal and work backwards. And
Yeah.
in that, it is around mitigating risk and how can we mitigate risk, and taking the very intangible fear
Yeah.
of that feeling sick in the
Mm.
stomach or just not knowing.
Mm.
It's so intangible,
Mm.
because feelings are intangible. You
Yeah.
can't touch it, can you? So I
No.
take that intangible fear and I make it very tangible from a dollar perspective.
Yeah.
And that's when the light bulb goes on. They go, oh wow, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And so I feel that I inadvertently, through a process of psychology, getting people to uncover their fears. And
Yeah.
once they're uncovered, we can really work with those fears to
Yeah.
make them tangible, and they seem to get it, and then they want to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I'm imagining that there is a real mindset around um, approaching the concept of investing. And in chatting to you previously, you've mentioned that the media can really make things sound really negative, and it can be very off-putting. How do you combat that?
uh, in different ways. Before Well, actually, before COVID, we would, they were the banks were saying interest rates aren't going up. And this is just something that I know, there's a cycle of life and
Yeah.
there's a cycle of bank interest. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that when people were really locking in at incredible low rates at, 1.8, 1.9,
Yeah.
2.2, I
Yeah.
were telling my clients that, please understand that, yes, this is what the repayment's going to be. But if interest rates go up, you need to think, what if they do go up 1, 2, 3, 4%? Now, I have to tell you, I never thought they'd go up by 4%. I didn't think they'd get to 7%, but
Mm.
I always thought they'd sit around the 5%. So really, in that journey of that, that 24 to 30 months,
Mm.
people were unfortunately unaware and how it would have changed their lives. So I was talking about that before it happened, and then it did happen.
Yeah.
The media was so negative. Instead of making suggestions about how you can work through this, how you can change the family's cash flow, what you need to implement and put in place as interest rates were rising, the
Mm.
media would just sell, sell, sell. You're going to lose value in your property. And I was adamant that that wasn't going to happen. And I kept on putting that information out, be positive. Then together with COVID, for example, we had the media telling us that property is going to drop by 50%. And oh
Mm.
gosh, did I get on the bandwagon on that one? No, it's not. It's actually going to go up.
Yeah.
Our home is where our heart is. Our home is where we sleep overnight, and we're going to make it, and we're going to hang on to it. And
Yeah.
this is where economists, I feel, get it wrong, because the share market is so liquidable. You can buy today, sell tomorrow. A property, you can't do that. And I feel that as Australians, the great Australian dream is to have a home. We love property. And because we love property, this is where the emotion is very intangible. And we will do whatever it takes to hold on to that property
Yep.
in a good way, okay, in a good, positive way. And
Yep.
so regardless of interest rates going up, we never had, yes, unfortunately, people did lose homes. Yes, there were defaults, but we never had the percentage that the economists were predicting.
Yeah.
And they were predicting huge defaults and they were predicting huge losses when you were selling. It
Very.
didn't happen. Property went up by 20, 30 and 40%.
Like
So
we did.
it was really around my philosophy around emotions.
Yeah.
I was adamant that holding on to your property was more important to you
Yeah.
than thinking about an interest rate. And people did go out and get a second and third job. They
Yeah.
did bring in discretionary spending. They did think about, money coming in, money going out. So it had a positive financial influence, I believe, but the media was so negative and the media still get it wrong. And then when the media say, oh, there's a boom suburb coming up, look, they're generally 18 months behind. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, with the research that I do, we know what's happening all the time, and media, sensationalize it. This is the boom suburb, you're going to make money, but they forget that that suburb's already done that. We need to move on to another suburb or another city or another regional city or another state. So it's all around the research. Yeah. Actually, I call it the McDonald's syndrome.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah. Do you see that there's a McDonald's that's built in the middle of nowhere? No. You see McDonald's built in the middle of a very populated area, together with a Bunnings store, together with Coles or Woolworths. People say follow the money. I say follow the retail sector, to tell you the truth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is such a swathe of information that you're presenting here. I really should be taking notes because, I haven't thought about it from this perspective because, myself included, it's so easy to be caught up in the message that the media portray about the doom and gloom of the state of the real estate industry and where things are going. But to chat to someone like yourself who really understands it, it's a very different perspective. And yes, the emotions do need to be brought into it because that's what we use to decide whether we're going to put the money down or not.
Yeah.
And as you say, keep holding on.
We buy with our heart and we justify it with our head. It should be the other way around, okay? But that doesn't happen overnight. And there is definitely a different emotional level when it comes to your own home to an investment property.
Yep.
And then I get people saying, oh, well, it's an investment property. I don't have to worry about what it looks like. The tenant's just going to pay. Well, I am so anti that. I also teach my clients to be very good landlords because, you as an owner occupier, you know what you want in your own area and the conveniences and the amenities that you want for yourself and your family. And, so why would a tenant not want those things? So I do teach my clients to be very good landlords.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. Really glad to hear that because there's some pretty average landlords out there and the horror stories we hear and, pretty average tenants as well, it goes both ways. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to be the good human, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And look, it's a decision. You either go into this to make money and you really don't care, or you go into this that it's a strategy in long term to achieve something that you want to achieve. So, you don't go and buy a car and rev it up and run it into poles and wreck it, do you? You actually keep it because it's an asset and you look after it. Well, an investment property should be no different. Just because you're paying a property manager to manage it for you and you have a tenant occupying it, it's still your asset, so you still should look after it. And trust me, Rachel, so many people don't have that mindset. And when I explain it to them, they go, oh, of course.
Yeah. I'm sitting here going, oh, of course. It makes a lot of sense. Do you get peppered with questions a lot when you do your presentations? Like, are people's brains going, oh, what about this? What about that?
And I always start my presentation with, you are welcome to ask questions. You really are. And please don't think any question is a silly question because there will be someone else in the room that is thinking exactly what you want to ask. So, be game. However, if you ask me a question that is extremely personalised that I'm not going to be able to cover in this presentation, I will stop you and I'll just say, I'm happy to answer that when we finish because it's your personal. But in context of what you've asked as a general answer, this is how I will answer it. I do get many questions, but I generally get 5 general questions.
Okay.
What if the tenant trashes the place? What if I lose my job? What
Yeah.
if I can't get rent? What if interest rates go up?
Yeah.
And another one is, what if I buy the wrong property and it's the worst decision I've ever made? And I actually answer those questions through the presentation, through the what ifs, and
Yeah.
uncovering it. But something that one of my business coaches alerted me to was, Christine, you have so much knowledge.
Yeah.
You need to start writing down the questions and have, frequently asked questions on your website.
Yeah.
And the funny part there is, once I'm asked a question, I go into answering that question, but I do go over and above, because it's
Yeah.
the question that they're asking generally isn't what they need to know. So
Yeah.
I go into it, and by the time I've answered it and given education
Mm.
again, I've forgotten what the first question was in the first place. So
Yeah.
I never think to write it down. But it's really funny that you asked that, because something that we've actually finally created is
Mm.
a 100-point checklist.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and in this 100-point checklist, okay, there is 100 questions
Oh,
that
wow.
you need to know the answers of
Yeah.
before you actually sign on the dotted line.
Oh, how
And
useful.
and really, it came out of, I was going to start an online course, and well, what's it going to be, and what should it be? And so together with my 2 girls, my 2 girls that work for me,
Yeah.
we started writing down questions, and it just started to formulate. They were
Mm.
sectionalized, and we sectionalized them, and we've created this 100-point checklist. So we've at the point whereby we're creating now a landing page, and anyone can download it, because we found in the questions, as I said before, when I answer a question, I go much further because it's not what they're really asking. We
Yeah.
found in the questions that you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't
Exactly.
know, you don't know what question to ask. So
Exactly.
I've just made this 100-point checklist that these are the things that you need to consider, and
Yeah.
consider them and get the information from there as well.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep on educating.
Mm.
There's no right or wrong answer. There is what you want to achieve, and what trajectory, how quickly you want to do it, how long you want to take it.
Yeah.
Is this a legacy? Is this for just cash flow? Is this something that you want to leave to the cat society? It's okay. Once I understand what their goal is, I just work backwards for them. Yeah.
Yes. Do you know where my brain goes? My brain thinks there's 100 points on that checklist. There's 100 things I've got to know.
Mm.
That's really thorough.
And it's
Thorough. That's great.
because you don't know what you don't know, and
Exactly.
unfortunately, too many times I've come across clients that have come into my world,
Yeah.
and they have purchased on emotion.
Yeah.
They've been to a seminar and it was rah, 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 you've got to do it and get in
Oh,
there. And so they sign on the dotted line, and then they sign up for that course. And so many times I've heard the mistakes that have come out of the purchase. And I actually call it buyer's remorse,
yeah.
regret.
Yeah.
We have all bought something that we know we shouldn't have,
Yes.
whether or not it be clothing, whether or not it be go on a particular trip, whether or not it's a restaurant that we've chosen. We've all done something that we've had remorse after it. Well, we can get away with those things, but when
Yeah.
it comes to a property,
Yeah.
it can turn into a huge remorse.
Yeah.
So things like, if you're buying in an established area that's an older area, and I'm just going to sort of choose some suburbs here, Fitzroy, Richmond, very, very old areas whereby some of the properties are still under the original title that was handwritten. And so those titles that are handwritten, if they haven't been transferred into the digital age,
Yeah.
it could be the figures might not be very readable.
Yeah.
And so a little thing like title insurance goes a long way. It's a $300 fee that can ensure that you're buying what you think you're buying.
Yeah.
Because too many of those properties, you end up not buying what you thought you were buying. You
Yeah.
were buying the plot of land that you thought you were buying. And
Oh,
then we've had, when it's been handwritten titles into, the next pro forma of the digital, the computer age, and then it's gone digital. We have human error when there's been data entry whereby they've reversed figures.
yeah.
And so, mistakes, there's been human mistakes, and then eventually it's found,
Yeah.
but the person who's purchased the property, it's their cost to fix
Yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah.
little things like title insurance, and you wouldn't even think about it. Things like
No.
a build and pest inspection, people won't do it because they've gone through the property and it's just beautiful and they love it and they
Yeah.
fell in love with it. Nothing can be wrong with this. And then they've had to find out that they have to restump, or they've found out that the dishwasher didn't actually work because they didn't turn it on. Just little things that I suggest in
Yeah.
the gamut of things. It's
Yeah.
just making you aware to be more aware. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. There must be so much of that hands-on knowledge. It sounds like it's, knowledge that has been earned through hard experience.
Yes.
So
Yes.
much of that floating around in your head. No wonder you've got that list of 100 points. And again, my brain goes, I've got to get my hands on that. So speaking of, how do people get their hands on that list,
Thank
Christine?
you. Well, it will be released as a landing page, but anyone can visit my website, which will be up on the website in the next week or so. Anyone can visit my website. So that's smarterpropertyinvesting.com.au.
Yep.
Facebook page, smarterpropertyinvesting.com.au. My personal page is Christine Williams. LinkedIn, I have a company page again, but I also have Christine Williams as a property strategist. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and all those details. Normally, Donna and Dita send those details out to everyone because I'm computer illiterate. But yes, it can be as simple as you've seen my face, find me, and I offer a 30-minute complimentary conversation
Oh,
to
that's great.
anyone that I speak to. And
Mm.
it's up to them whether or not they choose to move forward and engage my services, either as a property strategist or a buyer's advocate or a consultant. They may choose to have a discovery session, which is $400 plus GST, and then they may engage my services fully. But once you engage my services, you become a part of what we call the financially fit family at Smarter Property Investing.
Yep.
And we've got a tribe, and they are financially fit families that have become my friends.
Yeah. And they sound very well looked after.
They are.
Very well looked after. I had a question floating around in my head. What was it? It was along the lines of, yes, I mean, you've got so much experience, and yes, you've learned everything through the hard knocks of experience. And ultimately, your passion is to share what you've learned with other people. How did you actually start speaking? How did you get into that?
That honestly, I am going to talk about something when I was in year 9. I was
Okay.
a talker. I was a talker I went to seven different primary schools and 4 secondary schools, and I left school at 15 and 4 months because I had to financially because of my parents. But in every single report, even though I went to all these different primary schools, I was a talker. She talks a lot. She discusses. I'm a talker. So I was a talker. When I got to secondary school, I had an incredible, when I was at Faulkner Tech, I had an incredible English teacher, Mrs. Gray. I'll never forget her. And she could see that, I don't know, I had this personality charisma or something. And we had our student night where all the parents come, and we had singing and dancing, and we had a fashion parade, and from the girls that did their sewing and stuff like that. And Mrs. Gray asked me to be the MC, and I went, oh no, I can't do that. Of course you can, Christine, you're a talker. Well, I have to tell you, it was the most frightening experience I've ever had in my life. And at that particular time in the 70s, the girls actually made bikinis, some of the girlfriends in, and the girls came out in their bikinis, and there were a couple of guys in the audience that whistled. Well, I have to tell you, ladies, I went, oh, and it went on the microphone, and I shook, and I just couldn't get off that stage quick enough.
Oh
I was
no.
never going to do that ever again. And so the fear of speaking, gosh, it's really there, okay? So that was a very, very negative thing that stopped it. But when I was a licensee for St. George Bank, I was at a networking to actually get into speaking, Rachel, to actually get into speaking. I always shied away from it. I would never present. I would educate on a one-to-one, but I would never walk into a room and do anything, even though I'd had managerial positions and so forth, but I would never present. Training became a one-on-one thing for me because I didn't want to stand up and talk to people. But I became a licensee from St. George Bank, and I was at this networking this day and I was talking about what I was doing, there was about 10 women. And I was the one that didn't stand up. I sat it from where I was sitting at the table, right?
Yeah.
But this woman approached me after it and she said, "This is just incredible, Christine. You've got so much knowledge. Would you please come and share that with our customers?" And I went, "Well, who are you?" Well, as it turns out, she was a regional manager for Bendigo Bank and
Great.
the branch was Camberwell, and she wanted me to go and do this a month later. And I went, "Of course. Of course I'll do that." Well, I have to tell you, I left that car. I was in the car shaking. What am I going to do? What am I going to talk about? So not only did I have to create a presentation, I had to deliver it. And they had about 45 people in the room. I wore pants. My legs were shaking.
Yeah.
It took about an hour and a half. I stumbled. I
Yeah.
had quite a few ums.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of me presenting, because from there, they asked me to come back and do it again and do it again and do it again. So for 10 years, Bendigo Bank would have me in front of anywhere between 20 to 50, 60, 80 people presenting education. So it really progressed itself. I became more confident. Eventually, I'd start wearing a dress because my legs weren't so shaky. And then I got to understand that I could read the audience and I could see body language. And if they were bored, I would, I don't know, ramp it up a little bit. If they were really intense, I'd break it down and explain it a little bit more. And it really just became a journey. Then I joined Professional Speakers Association 5 or 6 years ago to learn craft.
Yes.
There's craft behind all of this.
Yes.
And I believe with the confidence and the craft, I am very easy to, it's very easy to deliver the message that I want to deliver.
Yeah. That is quite the journey. I'm glad you got to, I'm glad it got to be full circle, that you could turn that initial negative experience into something that was actually very profitable, but not just for you, but for everyone else. You know,
Thank you. So it was a journey. And, you know, when I think about, I remember that night very clearly.
Wow. Yeah, you would. It's quite a defining moment, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm glad you were able to move on. I think I have one more question, and that is, do you have like one or two takeaways for our audience in terms of things that you believe would be helpful for us all to know?
I suppose there's two key takeaways for me. And the first one, which is broken into two, I am a true believer of you innately know in yourself if you're doing something right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so I call it, you know, you listen to your gut. And how many times haven't we, and we know we should have? So I call this the 3-night sleep test. If you're about to make a major decision in your life, and, you know, that could be a relationship, that could be buying a car, that could be buying a house. If you're about to make a major decision in your life and for whatever reason you cannot sleep for 3 nights in a row because you were anxious, there was just something niggling, look, walk away. It's just not the right thing. Your gut is telling you something's wrong.
Great advice.
But if you can't sleep for 3 nights in a row because everything's just ticking your boxes and you can see that this is the path and the journey that you want to go on, it's the right thing to do. So I do call it my 3-night sleep test.
Yeah.
And I really explain that during the presentation as well. The second thing that I would like you to take away, or your audience to take away, is I have what I call my pies formula. We all have someone in our family that's got an incredible recipe, and we ask that person to bring it to family functions because they make the best, I don't know, lasagna, the best chocolate cake, the best salad. Well, I call this my pies formula, my Nana's apple pie formula.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about investing in property, it is for your own home as well, but for investing in property, you have to have all the ingredients. And if you don't have all the ingredients, like Nana's apple pie, if you miss something, it doesn't taste the same. If you have all the ingredients under my pies formula, you are making a very good informed decision because you've had the research. And I call that around population, I call that infrastructure, I call that employment, and I call it supply and demand. And we've got to get all those key ingredients together, working together to make sure that you are comfortable with, you know, purchasing what is the right property for you in the right place that's going to give you the right return on investment. There is no perfect property, but there will be the right way to do it. So they would be my two key takeaways. And in that infrastructure, I alerted to it before, it's not necessarily just government infrastructure. It's actually private infrastructure that you should be looking at as well. Yeah.
Wow. I would not have thought of those things. And I love the way that you package them into analogies like the pie, the recipe, and the 3-night sleep test. I think that applies to so much in life as well, doesn't it?
It does, and it doesn't have to be for property. Like I said, any major decision that you're going to do. Yeah.
Exactly. What an absolute delight and privilege chatting with you today, Christine. I can see that you're an incredibly wise woman, and but you're also very generous with your experience and what you would like to share with the world. You have an incredible heart for people, and if people want to book you and spend time with you, where do they go? Do they go to your website to book you?
Yes, you can book a call, or you can go on the website and be registered for the newsletter, because we have a newsletter that goes out weekly with information. It's not I don't sell on any of that, but they can book a call, go to the website, smarterpropertyinvesting.com.au, book a complimentary call, and we'll go from there. And so there's 2 books there. It's called Suddenly Single. I wrote that when I became divorced, and then the 10-year commitment. So I've written a couple of books as well.
Oh, I should have known that.
No.
I think I did know about the Suddenly Single one, but I didn't know about the other one.
Yeah. And so it was really just a part of my journey and what I learned along the way. And in the 10-year commitment, it's got the PIES formula. It sort of teaches about that as well.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming onto our show today. It's been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your brain.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, Rachel. And I hope all your listeners get something out of this.
I'm sure they will. So to our listeners, I hope you enjoy this interview. This show goes live every Thursday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and will be uploaded straight to LinkedIn and Facebook. If you need a speaker, then please go to womenspeakers.com.au, and you don't have to pay a commission. You can contact your preferred speaker directly, and you can search by topic and location. You're also welcome to post a request into our Facebook and LinkedIn groups called Australian Women Speakers. If you are a speaker or want to be, sign up to our directory and get found. Thanks again for joining us today. My name is Rachel Pietsch. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.